I'm not okay with that. I want you to be able to talk whatever you guys say on the circus. I want to be able to have conservative students not being shamed on our universities.
This is like a golden age for conservative student speech. It's like, it's the best time ever. If you're a conservative student, you want to talk, you have huge platforms. I went to watch you speak at Turning Point USA. All these kids have huge audiences that come to see them, and that's great, that's fine. They're all speaking. Their speech isn't as a threat. There weren't any cops coming to shut down the Turning Point USA thing. But here's the thing. You say you care about the fentanyl crisis and our kids.
I care deeply.
Okay, right. So if you care so deeply about this, couldn't you actually do something about it if you stopped the bullshit about the last election? If you had just acknowledged that Trump had lost and acknowledged that you had lost, you'd probably be in good shape to do something. You probably would have won your governor's race had you just talked about things people cared about instead of the election fraud. So sometimes don't you ever think to yourself, I wish I could just stop talking about this fake thing that Donald Trump made me make up so that I could actually talk about the stuff that's important? Because we agree about fentanyl. I agree. I wish we could deal with that.
I talked about that all the time at the campaign trail. I'm sorry you weren't with me.
You.
I'm sorry you weren't with me every step of the way. The people of Arizona understand me, and they know me, and they care about me, and I care about them. And I care about that. Getting them better, freeing the people who are held political prisoners, yeah. Absolutely.
Right. I think you are still a little extreme. That's okay, though. It's good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you. That's right. I'd love to.
We have some areas of agreement.
Love to.
We agree on the fentanyl thing.
And
then you get into the other stuff.
Oh,
but the other stuff is what you have to do.
I'm sorry I'm not making you happy.
The other stuff is what you, I don't know why you're touching me. The other stuff is what you have to do to win, is the thing.
Sorry, I'm a mom. I'm sorry, I'm a mom.
That's okay. I like to touch too, but you know, in an interview setting, it's a little uncomfortable.
I'm sorry that we don't agree on everything, but what I am not sorry about is that I think that I do believe that we can agree that we both love America.
We do. Well, I know that I love America. I do think that you were okay with Donald Trump trying to end the American experiment last time, so that makes me wonder how sincere your love is. But I do appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you for your time.
That man right there is Tim Miller, a lifelong Republican and nightmare fuel for people like Kari Lake. And if you're anything like me, you'll spend most of your day wondering what happened to all those normal people in the Republican Party who actually do value decency and honesty. And the truth is that they exist. There are people like Tim Miller who admittedly don't make up very much of the conservative base anymore, but who obviously didn't vanish from the face of the earth. And to that point, I actually interviewed Tim in January of this year and asked him about this exact phenomenon, about what conservatives like him do now that the party has left him, and here's what he had to say. With that said, you were a longtime Republican consultant. There are a small faction of you out there. Like, where do you fit into politics today? Because, you know, I hear a lot about these moderate Republicans, these Reagan Republicans, but that Republican Party doesn't actually exist in practice. So we're in a moment where, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a 9/11 truther, is sitting on the Homeland Security committee. Like, that's what the Republican Party looks like today. So I guess where do you fit into this?
Certainly don't fit in there. And I tried to fight within the party. We tried to recruit a primary against Trump in 2020 and didn't recruit any strong candidates. And after all the Stop the Steal stuff, I officially left the party in 2020 because it just felt hopeless. But we still are pretty important, right? We're not, with us former Republican types, swing voters, moderate types, we might not be enough to control either of the parties, obviously, that have moved away from us. But if you just look at 2022, you know, this isn't kind of popular to say in progressive spaces, but like if you just look at the numbers, with exception of young voters, like the core Democratic groups didn't turn out as high as Republican groups. Young voters turned out higher than they tended to, so that helped Democrats in certain places. But Republican base turnout was higher than Democratic base turnout in 2022. The reason why Republicans did worse was because people that identified as maybe 8% of people that identified as Republicans nationwide, in different districts, voted for the Democrat because they're like, this party is so crazy. That's why the Democrats won, did better than expected and held the Senate. And so I think it's an important group that frankly, the Joe Biden Democratic Party is talking to now more than the Republican Party is talking to. We'll see if the Republicans learn their lesson for 2022. I don't see any evidence that they have. But right now, like the reality is we're just my people, like the Romney, Clinton, Biden people, like we're just homeless and we're just going to be. And many of us are, for all practical purposes, Democrats until until the Republicans get their shit together. And like you said, I don't see that on the horizon.
I've spoken to Mike Murphy about this, who is another Republican who came on to speak with me. But just kind of this idea of, would you kind of vote for Democrats? And Mike said no, but like I think it's going to be different here. But would you vote for Democrats to hasten the demise of the Republican Party as it stands now, until you can until up from the ashes will emerge a different Republican Party?
God love Mike Murphy. You know, there's nothing false about hope, and he's a sweet guy and a smart strategist and won a lot of campaigns. But he's just hoping for a party that's going to come back that's not ever going to come back. And so I think that's why he answered the question the way he did, because he thinks, in good faith, this isn't a criticism, in good faith, he thinks it's worth it to fight for the party, pick the handful of good Republicans that are still out there, your Mitts, your Adam Kinzingers or whatever, and work with them. My view, I'm more aligned to your view, which is I think that that the Republican Party isn't going to actually reform itself until it feels like it's not viable. Look at what happened to the Democratic Party in the 90s with Clinton, right? Like, why did the Democrats move to the middle in the 90s? Well, because they just got their ass beat 3 straight times, in overwhelming blowout fashion. And so they're like, we have to move to the middle. Now, maybe some of the progressive listeners didn't like that move, okay? But like, that's what it was. It was a practical move. Right. If the Republicans are ever going to move back to a sanity, they're going to need to lose. And so I do think that that for now, I think that I'm essentially in an uneasy coalition, mostly with Democrats, and might be different on a case-by-case basis.
Well, the irony of that is that Republicans had the opportunity to do that. I mean, they were repudiated at the ballot box, and so they should have taken that as an opportunity to retool and figure out like what didn't work and change those things moving forward. But by virtue of kind of like burying their heads in the sand and doing this political theater where they pretended that they didn't lose an election that they very clearly lost, it kind of took that opportunity away from them to retool and present themselves better to their own voters so that they could win the next time. And then the next time they lost again. And so they kind of, they did it to themselves, right?
Yeah. Look, none of them listen to me anymore, my old friends who stuck around with the party. But I was screaming this from the rooftops. Had they convicted him during the second impeachment, instead of Mitch McConnell going out there and giving the speech about how his principles, but then voting to acquit, had they convicted him, he would have been barred from running in 2024. Now, that would have pissed off some MAGA people. And so 2022 probably still wouldn't have been great for Republicans because on the other side, they would have lost MAGA voters, not voters in the middle.
But probably less than the amount of Republicans who defected to the Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you could have built for the future, right? So they had this opportunity right in front of their face. They just needed to get 17 Republicans. They got 7. They needed to scrounge 10 more to convict his ass, ban him from running, and say, this is not us, this is not our party. And maybe they could have built from that. That, I think, was the critical error. And now I feel like we're in a spot where we're many cycles away from being able to fix it.
Again, that interview was from January, and since then, we watched as Republicans continued not learning their lesson by yet again running on their extremism. Just days ago, in this latest off-year election cycle, Republicans lost in Ohio and Virginia and Kentucky and Pennsylvania and almost Mississippi, because this is a party that, whether because they're too afraid to part with Donald Trump or because they're fully bought in on his agenda, will embrace extremism no matter what the cost. And that cost thus far has been losing elections in 2018, 2020, 2022, and now 2023. But you know what they say, never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake. Unless you believe that Republicans are finally going to learn heading into 2024, just remember, Kari Lake will be the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate in Arizona, and Donald Trump will likely be the Republican nominee for president, which right there shows that they have learned nothing. So I can stand here until I'm blue in the face explaining the precise ways in which Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot and making themselves unelectable, and I'm sure some Democrats will want me to shut up because it would help the Republicans, but they don't care. They will never listen, no matter how obvious it all becomes. The fact that we're likely to see both Kari Lake and Donald Trump as the GOP nominees for their respective races in 2024 is a testament to exactly that. These people aren't flukes, they are features of the Republican Party. But look, while in some ways that's great, because they sure do tend to lose a lot, on the other hand, we have to be clear-eyed about the fact that they can still win. Donald Trump was the president of the United States for 4 years. He was completely written off, and yet he won then and he can win again. And the flip side of having these crazy candidates is that while they do tend to lose more often than not, when they win, the danger is beyond clear. All of which is to say, even in the aftermath of a great election night, now is not the time for complacency. It is to double down and ensure that the Kari Lakes of the world never get to within a mile of the levers of power in this country. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.